Writer David Koepp speaks about Jurassic World Rebirth for the very first time in a brand new interview. He's written a list of commandments that future movies must abide by, and that he followed while writing Rebirth. He sounds very excited about this sequel. He's returned to the franchise for the first time since 1997's The Lost World, and it sounds like he had a really good reason to. Welcome back to Jurassic Outpost. Let's check out what he has to say.
Let's get this movable feast underway. Don't move!
We've been waiting to hear from the legendary David Koepp about Jurassic World Rebirth, and thanks to a new podcast interview with The Playlist, we have just that. The writer of both Jurassic Park and The Lost World, arguably the two best movies in the franchise, spoke about teaming up with Steven Spielberg again on this franchise and what it meant to return. He gives some pretty good insight into the movie, its reason for existing, and hints at the tone, which feels like it'll be more akin to the feelings set out in the very first one. Let's take a look. David Koepp stopped by The Discourse recently to talk about his latest career developments, like working with Steven Soderbergh on Presence, but Koepp also teased his return to a major franchise he once helped make a classic, Jurassic Park. He writes Gareth Edwards' upcoming Jurassic World Rebirth, his first film in the franchise since The Lost World Jurassic Park. So what brought Koepp back to pen a new dinosaur actioner after 25 years? In Koepp's words, it was the chance to write a streamlined script in a familiar world. That was a ball. I had such a nice time on it, said about writing Rebirth. I hope people like the movie because the series tended to change after 3, and it felt like, okay, so let's change our tone. Steven Spielberg and I were interested in a tone that was maybe more akin to the very first movie. I saw it early on as a mission movie. I like things that are driven by bottles, by containment, you know? And so developing a limited team and a thing that they have to accomplish, that was all really fun. Koepp continued, and it was just fun to return to that world of great adventure backed by real science and write some cool new characters. You don't often get a chance to have a blank slate and say, what do you want to do? There were no franchise expectations other than dinosaurs. Koepp even went so far as to create a list of rules the franchise needs to abide by moving forward, which was inspired by the most unlikely of sources. I actually wrote a list of 9 commandments, which was inspired by Chuck Jones, who had written 9 commandments for the Roadrunner cartoons, like all adventures must take place in the American Southwest, gravity is always the coyote's worst enemy, all products must come from the Acme Corporation, Koepp said. And so I made a list of things that we had to abide by. One was the events of the previous 6 movies that cannot be contradicted or denied because I don't like a retcon. Those are no fun. 2, humor is oxygen. Science must be real. You know, all the things that we wanted our movie to be, and I just had a great fun doing it with Steven and then with Gareth Edwards. Reflecting on the experience, Koepp described the surreal nature of returning to a franchise 30 years later. It was trippy to go back to a London soundstage 30 years after I walked onto a Los Angeles soundstage and see the jungle and the people in their jungle gear, he said. And it was just all back, it even smelled the same. But the cast of Rebirth are all newcomers to Jurassic Park this time round. Edwards' new film stars Scarlett Johansson, Jonathan Bailey and Mahershala Ali and hits theaters on July 2nd, 2025. And while the new Jurassic Park movie isn't an official reunion between Koepp and Spielberg, Spielberg's upcoming UFO blockbuster certainly is. Koepp also had enough time on the podcast to confirm that his upcoming collaboration with the director is a sci-fi adventure reminiscent of Spielberg's earlier works. Yes, it is like a sci-fi. Well, I don't know, I'm not supposed to say, but yes it is, Koepp confirmed. It does harken back to maybe a different tone than what he's done lately, something he used to do that he hasn't done for a little bit. In other words, everything old is new again when it comes to Koepp's recent screenwriting. Spielberg's next picture hits theaters May 5th, 2026. What a great interview, seriously. He even throws a bit of shade at the World trilogy there. I mean, just kidding, but hearing that he wrote a list of commandments just shows his passion for the franchise still after all these years, and to help future films at least stay on track. No retcons, all 6 movies happened, humor is oxygen, and the science must be real. I wonder what the other 6 are. What do you think? What would your commandments be for the franchise? I can't think of too many names who would be a better choice to create a set of Jurassic commandments. I mean, he wrote the first 2 films, adapting them from Michael Crichton's novels, and he has been involved in small capacities for ideas, writing and revisions on multiple films in the franchise since then. Not forgetting his novel Cold Storage, which feels very Jurassic adjacent. He is undoubtedly one of the foremost voices on the Jurassic franchise story and certainly has a fantastic resume within the series. Anyway, the writer confirmed that this is a mission movie, which is quite in line with director Gareth Edwards' other work. He also mentioned containment, something that the world movies somewhat failed to create, the feeling of isolation and containment. What he had to say about the other trilogies is generally on point. The series tended to change after the third and felt like, okay, so let's change our tone. He confirmed that after the third Jurassic Park movie, the movies changed their tone, the world era definitely feels different to the first three, and it would appear that he and Steven Spielberg have acknowledged that. And better yet, have acknowledged that Rebirth needs to return to the tone set in the original. Music to my ears. We've been saying as much from the beginning, and you might remember a couple of months ago, we heard this coming from somebody who knows Scarlett's husband, Colin Jost. Supposedly, what they have heard from the script, it's very much a back to basics approach, more in line with that first film. He confirmed that there are no animatronics this time round. Of course, outside of whatever Steve Brusatte was referencing, we knew as much, but getting that final confirmation that there weren't any kept secret inside the sound stages that we couldn't see, I guess is good to hear. I have no issue with visual effects if they are done correctly, if they are utilized correctly, and Gareth does seem to be the guy to do it. You'll never recreate the magic created on the first three though, with those giant animatronics. Just magic. This was genuinely a really fantastic interview. David Koepp is a legend and somebody I've admired since I first became entranced by the first two movies. Having him back is a recipe for success, and I truly hope that Rebirth lives up to that. You can listen to the full interview with David Koepp, and it's worth listening to by heading to theplaylist.net. I put a link for that in the description of this video. So let's talk about those 9 commandments. We've got 3 of them, but what else would they be? I would say perhaps a real feeling of suspense and terror needs to return. Scientists or paleontologists back in the lead roles. Science as part of the story. Perhaps no big dinosaur battles. It's not needed and not really what the movie should be about. Dinosaurs to behave more like animals, less as monsters. Maybe an island or a jungle location. Maybe that's one of them. No action hero, superhero behaviors. A classic Spielberg setup has always been ordinary people in extraordinary situations. Cool ass vehicles, technology that is relevant, plausible, and believable, not overly futuristic, allow carnivores and herbivores to share the screen without unnecessary conflict. I mean, the list could go on. I asked earlier, but what would your 9 commandments be? Leave yours in the comments. Alright, one more thing about David Koepp. I've had this tab saved for a while now, and this feels like the right video to feature it in. A post by equivalent Lychee199. Honestly, Reddit, man. I was watching a couple of David Koepp's interviews recently. In all of them, he describes about his writing style and the bottle method he uses to tell a story to get full creative explosion of ideas. He says, the world is too big and choices are too fast. Movies thrive on something that's constrained. If it takes place in a limited time, limited place, and if there's only 3 characters in the whole movie, all those kind of limitations often leads to a great explosion of creative ideas because your storytelling mind is trying to solve these problems within some very specific limits. I just thrive on that method and it's energizing for me. The post goes on, after listening to his words, I have learnt that all of his movies and the novel he wrote, Cold Storage, have that compact and constrained structure. I think Colin Trevorrow never understood why JP worked, because it had created that tension, unsafe, suspenseful horror and less characters and less dinosaurs environment for the whole movie. The Lost World 2 had its tension-filled sequences even though they changed the ending by moving to a whole other location, but that change is due to Spielberg as we all know. So obviously I was wondering whether Koepp followed that similar pattern and structure for the upcoming movie. The initial rumors were that the script is small-scaled, compact and less characters. If Universal really could bring his style of structure, then we could get a really solid movie surrounded by an event and a really suspenseful and scary with less characters. I think that gives a great insight into David Koepp's method and honestly what he's brought to the table with the new movie. No longer is Jurassic World gonna feel like a globe-trotting spy film or something like that. Instead, Jurassic will return to the tone and scale of the first 2 movies, and that is what fans have been crying out for a very long time. That's it from me. I loved this new interview, loved what David Koepp had to say, and I'm more excited than ever for this movie. I also can't wait for Spielberg's new UFO film. I've said for a while that Spielberg needs to return to Aliens, and it sounds like he knows that too. Thanks for watching this video.